Hi, I'm Tiffany Jones. I am the literacy specialist and reading interventionist at our school for kindergarten through third graders. And I wanted to share with you, as I'm getting ready to invite your student to my small group class, what I feel like you as the parent need to know if your kindergarten or first grade student needs some reading support. The first thing I wanted to show you is just how critical it is to catch the need early. And so what you're looking at is a DIBELS proficiency chart. DIBELS is the way that we measure proficiency in our school by the end of third grade. Now I know kindergartners are taking the KEEP assessment this year, which also gives us some really good and similar data. Measure some of the same skills just a little bit more in depth. So what we're seeing, the trend is back in 2015, 62% of kindergartners were ending the year with the skills that they needed to be able to go on and be successful in the next year. So they were being marked as proficient by the end of kindergarten on this blue line. And you can see they've been tracking it for several years, and the reason it's a cohort is because they kept track of the same group of kids. So this group of kindergartners, they tracked them when they got to first grade here in the orange, and then when they got to second grade in the gray, and then when they got to third grade in the yellow. And they've done that several years now. This chart came from the literacy people at the State Office of Education. And what we're seeing here, well, there are a lot of things actually going on, but students make a huge jump from kindergarten to first grade. That's kind of that big window to catch the kids that weren't ending the year proficient. In kindergarten, the biggest jump you see on the chart happens between kindergarten and first grade. And then back in 2015, apparently reading instruction was going a little better in the state. They were still stepping up and making some gains, but you can see that this last cohort that got tested in third grade for their proficiency had just flatlined after they hit first grade. So if we can catch this early and help get the other 40% of students to be proficient by kindergarten, that's going to increase what they're able to do in first grade and second grade and really mark the trajectory for their reading for all the years to come. And once they get to third grade, we've kind of make a shift between learning how to read and reading so that you can learn something. And when we flip and get there, it's really important that they've acquired these basic reading skills, or it is very difficult to bridge that gap. So we want to make sure we are catching your students early and remediating any gaps that they might have early on so that they're not looking the same way that these students look. So how are we going to do that? Well, I want to tell you that the most effective intervention targets specific student needs, and we're going to do that in a very systematic way and explicit way. So what I mean by that is we want to have a plan, a very laid out segment for how we're going to teach these skills, and to do it explicitly means we are not leaving anything to their guessing. We are laying it out for them, being very what's a different word for explicit? Just upfront. We are working on this skill today. This skill is important because of these reasons. So they know exactly what we're talking about. There's no guessing. There are two different ways that we are going to make sure your student gets specific, targeted instruction, and that it's explicit and systematic. And one of those key pieces this year is going to be iReady. You've had them take the diagnostic, and hopefully you've allowed them to do that all on their own so that their results show exactly what their ability and knowledge is. If for any reason you feel like, oh, maybe those didn't exactly show their true abilities, whether they didn't do as well as they should have, or whether they did better than you know they could do on their own because you gave them some support, we need to get that adjusted so that we are giving them instruction in iReady that really fits their needs and targets their needs. It's really important that your student especially logs in every day to iReady and works on the reading lesson that is in there for them. So that diagnostic kind of narrowed down onto these are the skills they need to work on. They prioritize the ones that were most important, and they assign lessons to them based on that most important priority for your students. So please have them log in and do iReady every day. And if for any reason you feel like the lessons that they're doing are too easy or too hard, please reach out to either me or your homeroom teacher if those are different. I know I am some of your homeroom teachers, and we can adjust that so that they are working at a level that's appropriate for them. The other thing we're going to do is, like I said, I'm going to invite them to a small group reading class. Most of my classes this year will be in the afternoon, so as soon as I get the groups all organized and squared away, I will send the time and give you the information you need to be able to go. You'll see it show up in their daily plan. This is a weekly view of the daily plan. If you pull that up, you can see all the classes for the week. So it will look something like Tier 3 reading class, and it will be required. I want them to come every day. I want them to participate with me every day so that I can see how they're learning and growing, and I can help them. I wanted to give you some information about what I'm going to be teaching in the classes and give you a little bit of training and knowledge on that so that you can also help support from home. So, very first of all, things that I run into a lot with kindergarten and first graders is phonological awareness. They need to be able to hear sounds in words, and it's very, very connected to how well they're able to read those written sounds on the page. So here's some things you can do with your students to see if they have the skills that they need in phonological awareness. It doesn't take very long, but they should be getting at least 5 or 10 minutes of this kind of instruction a day if they are lacking at all in this. So you can ask them questions like, does cat rhyme with hat? And have them tell you yes or no. And tell them a rhyming word is a word that sounds exactly the same. At the end of the word, we're going to be very explicit and tell them exactly what rhyme is and what it means. You could ask what other words rhyme with cat and just see how many they can come up with. You can do things like, what is the first sound in cat? And then, does car, rat, or dog begin with the same first sound as cat? Tell me some more words that begin with the k sound. What is the last sound? You can go for middle sounds. We want them to be able to isolate beginning, middle, and ending sounds in words. We want them to be able to hear what are all of the sounds in cat, and that's called segmenting. If you go backwards and say, tell me the word that this makes, k, at, that's blending. So both of those are really important precursors to reading, because when we read, we're putting sounds together, and when we write, we are segmenting the sounds and figuring out, okay, what sounds go into this word to make it up, and then we spell it out. So these are two really important skills that your students need to have before they ever start reading words on the page, are to be able to blend sounds together to build a word and to segment them apart to be able to spell a word. You can also do activities like switching out, manipulating the phonemes, saying, what if I change the beginning sound in cat to s? What word do I have now? So these are all skills related to phonological awareness. It's very important that they have a solid foundation in this, or it's very predictive that they are not going to do as well later on if they don't have that solid foundation. Once we know that they have this phonological awareness skills that they need, we need our students to be able to recognize and say letter sounds automatically. Automatic means they don't have to think about it. They don't have to give cognitive energy to figuring out, okay, that symbol is B and the sound for B is B. They don't have to, their brain just does it because it's automatic for them. If they can get to that level, then it's going to really cut down on the processing that has to take place in their brains in order to be able to read, if they're not having to sit and think about, really figure out every single sound that the letters make. So I am going to teach the letters by introducing them in 5-letter sets. And you can see them up here. You may wonder why I'm not doing it in alphabetical order. Well, because we want them to be able to start reading words as soon as they can. So I'm going to start with some really common letters that help to build words. We're going to teach one vowel sound at a time. Vowels are extremely important, and you need to make sure you are modeling the correct vowel sound for them, because when you're first learning these, to differentiate between and I is nearly impossible for some of these little kiddos. That sounds so similar, so we have to look at the shape of our mouth and have them pay attention to those things. What are the differences when I say I'm dropping my chin, and when I'm saying I, okay? So I have lots of little ways and symbols to differentiate vowel sounds. I don't want to share all of that right now, or else this video is going to be an hour long. But what I am going to do with your student is go back through the letters of the alphabet and make sure that they know these. So we will show upper and lower. And as we learn them, I am not going to teach them. I'm going to combine them with that vowel sound A as quickly as possible. Here's why. If I sit and tell them the sound for B is B, B, B. Well, yeah, it's B when I have a B and a U together. But when I say the B in this little blend right here, the B doesn't say ba, it says ba. Okay, we go right into the vowel sound. The vowel sound influences our consonant sounds a lot. So I don't love having them be isolated, those consonant sounds, especially the hard ones where we have to say it really fast and we're done. Okay, F is that exact same way, D is that exact same way. It's hard to articulate that sound without adding an sound after it. But it's hard to hear the F, so oftentimes we end up saying F. But if you're reading this word, it doesn't say F-A, it says fa. So we want to teach these letters and these vowels together so that we can start blending, immediately blending those consonant sounds with a vowel sound. So you can see the slide here is to tell them we're putting these sounds together. Ba, not ba, sorry, ba, fa, and da. Okay, so we'll teach all the letters in these little letter sets. Notice how I switched the common vowel order that we do. A, E, I, O, U is often how we teach vowels. I'm going to teach A, E, O, U, I. And the reason for that is because if they know all of their vowel sounds, then we can teach them how to spell perfectly with C and K. You're never going to see them spell cat, K-A-T, because there's a rule for that that works 100% of the time. And if they know all of the vowel sounds, then we can teach them that from the beginning, and that will never feel confusing. Once your student is able to recognize all of the letters of the alphabet and say their sounds automatically when they see those words, we are going to get more and more into word reading. Now, this can start, in this first letter set, take a look. We have this first letter set. Look at all the words that we can make using B, F, D, G, and A. So we can start them reading really quickly once they are really getting the hang of these letter sounds. But here's my request. When you're working with your students at home, please teach them to blend the sounds in words smoothly instead of chopping them up. And here's an example of that. So here we have the word bag. If they came to this word and didn't know what it was in a text that they were reading, oftentimes I'll hear, and I used to do it too, but I've come to learn the error of my ways. I would say, okay, let's sound it out. B-A-G. Again, we're getting those schwa sounds, so it's saying B-A-G. And that's not really what the word says. It doesn't say B-A-G-A, right? And I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but for some kids, without ever combining those sounds and stretching them so that they run together, they cannot hear the sounds how they're supposed to go together in the word. And so it's much more effective to teach these little slides at first. That's why we were combining before. Ba. Then all they have to do, they're already stretching out. That the vowel sound's easy to hold out. Ba, if they still need to think. But if they can at least start by sliding those first two letters together and going directly into the vowel sound from the first consonant, they are going to do so much better at blending sounds to read whole words. For some students, I see them get on to second and third and fourth grade, and they're still sounding out each and every word that we read. We don't want to teach them that they have to do that. As soon as they can slide those sounds together and read it as a whole word rather than segmented sounds, we want to push them towards that. So please teach them. If they don't know what this word is, that we're going to start out and we're going to go fad, so that they can start hearing the way those sounds blend together. Gag, dad. They should be able to go directly into that vowel sound. So all of those skills are really going to be the big focus of my classes right now. And especially for some of your first graders, if they can get to the point where they're blending words together and reading them smoothly as whole words, then we're really going to start pushing for some more patterns. And I have a really systematic way of doing that. If you're interested in it, please let me know. I'm happy to share the method to my madness. But I wanted to make note of this. Please take time every day to read to your child, to help them foster positive feelings about literature and reading, and it really helps boost their vocabulary when you read to them, because you're able to read things that they couldn't read on their own. So they need that vocabulary, and they need that relationship that's built between you sitting and reading together. And those are all really important things, and they have their place. But please, I beg you, when they are practicing their reading, don't read for them. I know it is so tempting as you're sitting there and they're struggling through to try to process. But if you cut in and tell them the sound that they're trying to process through their brain, you're taking that learning that's going on in your brain, not in your brain, in their brain, and you're just stopping that from happening as they're trying to practice their reading. So there is a time and a place to help them, and you need to think about the purpose of the activity that you're doing. If they are supposed to be taking a piece of reading and doing comprehension activities with it, or if they're supposed to be taking a piece of reading and doing some sort of science activity with it, by all means, please sit and help them read. But when they're practicing their reading, don't do it for them. You're cutting their legs off. We need them to practice. We need them to process. And if they're stuck and they don't know, they're going to learn to just turn to you and go, I know you're going to tell me the sound, so why don't you just do it? So we don't want to give them that crutch. We want to help them to break free and to really do the hard work and the heavy lifting for themselves. So if there's one thing I can ask of you, please, and I really appreciate when learning coaches sit with their students, especially their very young students, in a Class Connect session and help them. I know that you need to do that. But when I'm asking them to do an activity such as read a word or think about a sound, don't cut in and do the hard work for them. So I know this was really lengthy. Hopefully it gave you some good information. Please contact me if you need help or you have questions. I am so happy to send resources, or if you have concerns about the way that we're doing the learning in class, I would love to address those. So here's my email address, T.I. Jones. A lot of the teachers' emails are just first initial, last name, but mine, Tiffany Jones, is like 1 in a million, right? So tijones@utahvirtual.org, and then here is my phone number. You can call or text me if you need anything.